did it without microphones.
I know that.
Okay. All right, welcome. Our goal today is to make this informative and give you an understanding of what the candidates for the National Committeeman will do while serving us at the RNC and continuing on the State Executive Committee. But before we start, let me state the rules and let the audience know that there are cards on which to submit questions. Debbie will bring the questions up to me here at the table. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening and 1 minute closing remarks, alternating alphabetically by first name, with Chris first for opening and Jason first for closing. We will have round 1 with an opening 3-part question, round 2, which is rapid fire, round 3 with open questions and 1 minute answers, round 4 with open questions and 30-second answers, and lastly, round 5 with closing remarks. After closing remarks, we will take some questions from the audience in the Q&A.
Raise your hand if you need a card to fill out a question.
The timer will go off if you go over, and I believe Don has some signs showing time remaining.
I'll have it here so you can see, and then if you go over, I'll just ding you when the time's up.
All right, so let's start with opening remarks. Chris, would you please go first?
2 minutes.
I'd like to begin by thanking the Cherokee GOP and the American Legion for hosting us this morning. I'd also like to recognize my wife of 10 years, Jenny, and the great partner she is in this endeavor. My name is Chris West, and I'm seeking the support of all Georgia Republicans to be your next RNC National Committeeman. Not just the support of those who will vote, not just the support of the select few, but all Georgia Republicans, because that is my most solemn charge. When I began this race 6 weeks ago, it's clear I was the underdog. I was less known. Party elders said, "You're not from Atlanta, it's not your turn, you're probably too young." Well, fast forward to today. I have earned the support of over 100 Georgia Republican leaders and conservative leaders across our state. From North Georgia to South Georgia, new party leaders, longtime party leaders, black, white, young, old, a strong, diverse coalition that I'm very proud represents our party, and I'm very proud to have their support. I earned it because I've spent the time talking to them, getting to know them, letting them ask the tough questions, letting them ask about my Judeo-Christian values and my upbringing, my 15 years in service to our party. That's how we've been able to get to where we are today. I think this group has one thing in common. We are tired of party elites like Mitch McConnell and John McCain and anybody else in Washington, D.C. that thinks they know better than the rest of us how to run our party and how to run our country. I look forward to answering your questions today, letting you get to know me, and I hope to earn your support in this race as well. Thank you.
All right, Jason.
Hey, I'm Jason Thompson. Many of you in this room probably already know me because we've worked together throughout the years on conservative causes. I'm a grassroots Republican, and I've been involved in the Republican Party since the early 90s. I'm the 7th District Chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, and I've been so since around 2009. And in that time, I've served on not only the Convention Rules Committee, but the Permanent Committee on Rules for the Georgia Republican Party. And I think it needs to be said right off the bat that Randy Evans is still our National Committee man. And he's going to be our National Committee man until he resigns. And nevertheless, here are the 3 most important things, most important responsibilities for a National Committee man. 1, upholding our conservative Georgia values at the RNC. Number 2, fundraising, and many times diverting funds appropriately. And 3, supporting and promoting the Republican platform through supporting and promoting President Trump's agenda. If you elect me, I promise to be the most accessible National Committee man we've ever had. And I say we because this seat belongs to us, the grassroots of the party. This party wasn't made to be a top-down party where there's an aristocracy that tells us how things are. It's supposed to be from the bottom up, a grassroots party, and I aim to keep it that way. If you vote for me, I will make you proud, and I won't let you down.
Thank you. All right, to the beginning of round one here, this question is a three-part question, and you each have 2 minutes to respond. All right, what do you believe is the responsibility of the National Committeeman? Next question is, why are you running, and what are you going to work on once you get there? Jason, please go first.
2 minutes.
2
Okay.
minutes.
All right, the first question was, what are the responsibilities of the National Committeeman? I think I just covered those, but I'm going to do it again. So really one of the first ones is to promote our conservative values at the RNC. Obviously, there's people there that aren't conservative, right? So we want to influence in any way possible and protect the platform to be conservative, protect our values at the RNC. I think that's pretty straightforward. The second thing, fundraising and diverting of funds, really. Let me tell you a story. Back during the Romney presidential election, was it 2012, I guess? Saul Anuzis was the chairman of the Michigan Republican Party. And RNC said, we need some money down in Florida. And I think he gave him about $7 million. Then they said, hey, we're not going to use that anymore. He said, well, I want the money back. And they said no. And so he ended up running for chairman because he got so mad about the whole thing. But there's just an example how we really need to be good stewards of the money and not only fundraise, but stewards of the money on where it goes. Not to a building that's owned by all the Karl Rove's companies, but actually send the money to places where the Republicans can actually use the money, to the grassroots of the party. Not a 24-hour, 48-hour strategy right at the end, or whatever you call it. But and the third thing is really promote and support the platform of the Republican Party by supporting President Trump's agenda. Right now, we've got a good number of Republicans that basically aren't doing that. So RNC and the National Committeeman and Committeeman should be a soundboard for that. That's it?
Finish it.
Okay.
I just want to let you know that was the 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Well, how many minutes do I have? 2 minutes. 2. Okay. Why I'm running. I think I have a unique set of skills and have the most, I think I have most skills that are most qualified for this position. And I'll reflect on that later since the time is run out. Go ahead.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. So what's the responsibility of the RNC National Committeeman? Why are you running? And what are you going to do? The responsibility of the RNC Committeeman is to represent all of our members, the grassroots, us. Look, if we could send the Colonel and Harry and several of the great folks in this room to go up there, that'd be great, but we can only send one. So we need that individual to represent all of our collective interest at the RNC. Not just the elite of the party, not just whatever the DC crowd thinks is popular. So why I'm running is to represent you, to go up there and to be a leader, to be able to project our party forward in a conservative direction, in a forceful manner, not in a way that needs to be done. I have a 5-year-old son, Preston. We've got work to do to be able to ensure that this country has the safeguards of liberty that we've enjoyed for the last couple hundred years. If we don't get serious about this, we're going to have a country that Preston's going to have to live in one day that just will not be viable. So that's why I'm running, and what I hope to be able to do when I get there is to be a leader, to represent your collective voices, to do the things like serve well on Rules Committee, and I look forward to talking about why I think I am the best qualified to do that. I look forward to being able to fundraise, and I think that's important. But what is essentially important is is ensuring that the voices that we make up, that is who this party is, are represented and heard at the RNC. And I look forward to doing that.
All right, round two. For a little bit of fun, we're going to do a rapid fire where the only acceptable answers are yes, no, or I don't know. The topics are mixed up, and we're going to go fast. So, Chris, we'll have you start rapid fire. All right. As district chairman, did you run your district honestly, ethically, and with full financial disclosure?
Yes.
Yes.
Should there be a litmus test for candidates to get on the Republican ballot? Fast.
No.
Jason,
No.
did you hold timely meetings in accordance with GOP rules?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you believe Senator McCain should be removed from the party?
Yes.
Yes.
Should candidates for office be required to sign a pledge to support our GOP platform?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you do all you can to keep God in our platform, unlike the Democrats?
Yes.
Do you have potential conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed prior to this election?
No.
Do you think Senator McConnell should resign his Senate leadership position?
Yes.
Please, yes.
Should we do away with the primary process and switch to a caucus vote like Iowa?
No.
No.
Will you support efforts to expand the platform to stop welfare, fraud, waste, and abuse?
Yes.
Do you believe Georgia should continue as an open primary, not requiring party affiliation registration?
No.
Maybe.
Will you provide copies of your district meeting minutes over the past year to the state committee for their review?
Sure. Yes.
The ones that we have, yes.
Do you support having a GOP committee member assigned to the state and congressional GOP House and Senate caucus meetings to ensure platform compliance and so that they can report back to us?
Can you read that one more time?
Sure. Do you support having GOP committee members assigned to state and congressional GOP House and Senate caucus meetings to ensure platform compliance and so that they can report back to the grassroots?
Yes.
Sure. Yes.
Will you support RFRA?
Of course.
Yes.
Do you believe the convention process is easy for the public to understand and get involved in the GOP?
No.
No. No.
Should the state GOP move to electronic voting or some other system to make the process smoother at our conventions?
Yes.
How about yes?
As attorneys, do you believe lawyers who lobby should register just like non-lawyers?
Yes.
Yes. I think there probably already are, but yes.
Okay. All right, round three, open questions with 1 minute answers. What is our party doing wrong to lose Cobb and Gwinnett to Hillary Clinton? Jason, you first.
Oh, okay. Well, there's been an influx of new people into these counties, and I live in Gwinnett, so I know this firsthand. So there's been a large illegal immigrant population, first of all, that's moved into Gwinnett, and it's changing. It's changing purple. Okay, so that's part of it. But at the same time, and I've seen the Gwinnett Republican Party kind of go up and down over the years. Bill Reynolds is here; he can probably speak to this too. We need to do a better job in Gwinnett County. But then the other county is Cobb. Cobb County, I think, is a model party for the rest of the state. I was there recently. They do things that are what I call outside the box, because one of the things we suffer from getting new people in is doing the same things over and over again. We need to make things interesting and excited for people in the public, and interesting and excited for the people in our party, so they'll actually come back, because the honest God truth is, people are starting to move away from the party. Elected officials are, grassroots Republicans are, because it's become boring. And we need to do it. We need to do a lot better job with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Good.
So I think there's a lot of factors there. I'd probably take the approach of, one, getting more people involved that shows the depth of the Republican Party. I think there are probably a lot of people who are Republicans but don't just don't realize it. They believe in things like lower taxes, limited government, strong military. There's a lot of new folks that have moved into Cobble Gwinnett. There are young people that are coming out of very liberal university institutions, and they've been told they're a Democrat, and they probably are not. I think one of the ways, so we need to reach out to those folks in a measured attempt to be able to speak to them to say, hey, here's what we believe. You may believe that too. And if you are, we'd like to have you on our team. Come get involved with us. And the next thing I think in terms of practically what we can do is we need to be very focused with our voter registrations. We need to get out and find out, go door to door. Take even an approach that is a focused approach where we go neighborhood by neighborhood. We've got great software that the party has. Let's take that software and go out and direct it to voters that we think could be, or potential voters, and let's get them registered and let's get them active in voting. If we were as good as the Democrats at registering voters, we probably wouldn't be. Maybe we would lose Cobble Gwinnett like we have.
Okay, thank you. For the next question, how would you counsel the National Party and our President's administration to build greater momentum in passing a conservative agenda? Chris, why don't you start first this time?
Could you repeat it? Sorry.
How would you counsel the National Party and our President's administration to build a greater momentum in passing a conservative agenda?
Well, I think we need to get Congress behind the president. Clearly, we elected this president to get things done. And I think that he's got a great plan to do that. I think Congress needs to get behind him and do it. And that's one of the things I look forward to doing at the RNC is telling them, get behind our president. Let's get some strong conservative tax legislation done. Let's get something done. You don't have to agree with the president 100% of the time. I mean, if you agree with him 80% of the time, then let's get behind him and get something done.
Jason.
One of the best ways to get things done is through grassroots mobilization, something I've been involved in since the beginning of my time in the Republican Party. It all starts with us. If we're mobilized, we talk to our congressmen, put the heat on our congressmen to do the right thing, then things get done. I think a lot of times our party suffers from apathy, and there are things that we can do to make things better. I talked about it just a second ago. One of the things is to make things more interesting. Look, we always hear about these coalitions, about groups that are coalitions like a minority engagement, right? For minority engagement, you know what we do? We get a minority person to go engage with minorities. I think that's wrong. If you want minority engagement, ask a friend of yours that's a racial minority to come with you to an event. Or go to something that's like, if you're a chairman of a club, go to a R&B festival and tell them you're a Republican. We need, well, that time goes quick.
Sorry. Remember, it's 1 minute.
All right, next question. What would you like to see change in our platform? And do you think Georgia should adopt one? Jason, you first.
Well, we've talked about this for quite a while, and it always comes down to we've already got a platform. It's the RNC platform, and it's a pretty good one. Now, there are some things within the platform that probably not everybody agrees with. I can't think of one right off the top of my head that's in there. Well, okay, here's one, term limits, all right? I think if we're going to have term limits, we should have term limits for the staff, right? Because if we don't have that, all we have is a bunch of unelected bureaucrats running everything. So that's actually in there, if you didn't know. But we have a really good platform, and the platform committee is the grassroots people that go to the convention and work on that quadrennially at the conventions. So we have a pretty solid platform. Georgia could merely just adopt the RNC platform, and I think we'd be in pretty good shape. But it'd be good to have something, wouldn't it? So we could point to it and say, hey, this is what we believe. I put on conferences over the years to bring in conservative speakers, to bring in professors, and to bring into politicians not only to speak, to hopefully sit there and learn something from these folks about our party, about our platform, about the Constitution, and I think we can do a lot more of that.
All right, Chris,
Same question?
same question.
All right, so I've got a portion of the RNC platform right here. This is pretty strong. I mean, defending marriage, defending the sanctity of marriage, federalism and the 10th Amendment, what our Constitution means, voter integrity and honest election, protecting religious freedom, protecting the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment against unlawful search and seizures, Second Amendment, keep the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, it's a pretty good platform if we'd actually, and this is only a portion of it, it's a pretty good platform, and I've read the whole thing. If we actually did it, I think we'd be a stronger party for it. I think we'd be a stronger country for it. It's really based on our founding documents, and I think it's pretty strong. Now, there's probably a few areas that we could sharpen up and make it relevant to today for some issues in terms of some items that are relevant to the conservative cause today that we should straighten up. But really and truly, I think it's a great document. If Georgia Republican Party can just replicate that here and bring it up, finesse it a little bit, and get it up to date, then yeah, I think that'd be a good thing.
All right, next question. How, if at all, do you or your business benefit from consulting, contracts, and just plain politics in general? Chris, I think you're first this time.
So thank you. There was somewhat of some dated information that someone put around about me. I used to be a political consultant. Proud of the work we did. Worked for some strong conservative candidates. I stopped in, I think it was March or April of 2004. I think I may still be on. It's been brought to my attention. I'm still on the website, and I think the guys may be taking that down. But we've signed legal documents where we stopped that, and so that's probably where that question's coming through. And I just wanted to address that. So now I'm a lawyer, and I work with a commercial development company, and we do commercial development, build shopping centers throughout the Southeast. And I don't know. In terms of politics, we go before county commissions and city councils to get permitted often. We work hard to represent our client, to of course follow the law and make sure that all of the public's rights are protected through that permitting process. But other than that, I don't know that I have any.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, I'm not a political consultant, and I don't lobby either, except grassroots when I call my congressman and say, hey, you need to vote this way. But the honest to God truth is I've lost probably hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years for my free work that I've done in the Georgia Republican Party, and I'm not ashamed of that, and I'll keep doing it. Not only have I been doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes on rules committees, things like this, but I've also been on the election law team every time they ask. And this has been going on for, is this working? This has been going on
Just gotta
for
work with it.
at least 8 years I've been on the election law team. So the answer is no, I don't make any money off of the party at all. I only help the party, just like you all here, as a grassroots advocate, and I always will.
I think guys just go talk right into it. Not too close. It's better that way.
Yeah.
I might add that no one in my immediate family is currently in any consulting role or been a prior lobbyist.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Let's go to round 4 with open questions and 30-second responses so that we have time to get to the Q&A section. All right, the next question is, what standards or process should be created to enable a person to run on the GOP ballot? Jason, please go first.
Say it again.
What standards or process should be created to enable a person to run on our GOP ballot?
For an elected office?
For an elected office, for anybody that wants to run for office, when they check the box that says they're a Republican, how do we know that they're really a Republican? Should there be a process or something created to?
Yeah, I wish there was something, but the way the law is right now is they really don't have to do anything. Matter of fact, there was a gentleman that was running for governor not too long ago, 4 or 8 years ago, that said he didn't even want to sign the box that said, I agree with the to support the Republican Party. But he wanted to run as a Republican. And when it came right down to it, legal counsel said, you know what, you don't have to check it. You don't have to check the box. You don't have to, or you don't have to sign the pledge. But I do think there should be something. Sometimes I think there needs to be some remedial courses on the Constitution and law in general.
Chris?
Yeah, I'd be open to look at looking at what other states have done in this. There's some places like Florida that are pretty have a pretty good understanding of some of the folks that are running. Obviously, you know, there's constitutional rights involved with some of the folks that are running, and we don't want to hamper those at all. But I'd be willing to look at how some of the other states are. I don't have any ideas specifically myself right now, but it's probably something that we need to look at.
All right, thank you. What do you guys feel we are doing right, and what do you feel we're doing wrong in messaging as a party? Chris?
We need to bring more folks into the party, like I said, that are probably Republican. They just don't realize it. A lot of the messaging is just, it's at a top level. You know, let's take one example. If you, I'd almost want to do a show of hands in the room, but when you think of how many events, fundraisers where so many people have come, you know, we had the Ben Carson dinner, which was great, which was fantastic. It was, you know, we raised a lot of money, but we need to be able to have things where just the everyday guy can come to and be able to interact with our leaders and folks that are running for office for us. So, that's one area where I think we could make our party more friendly. Is let's be a little more inclusive of folks and not be maybe known as the party of you know, kind of the old rich white guy kind of party that sometimes the media portrays us as.
Jason?
Well, we get killed on messaging every time. This is something that we really need to work on. For some reason, this has been going on for forever, but we let Democrats frame the argument, and then we follow from there. And this has been going on forever. One of the things, and this I've talked to my wife about this many times. Remember during when they would talk about women's rights and women's issues, you know who we put on the TV as the surrogate to talk about women's issues? Karl Rove. Really? Why would we do that? We need to stop doing these ridiculous things like this and start being aggressive with our messaging.
All right, thank you. This question I ended up adding after our past special election. So, should our special elections replicate the primary, runoff, and the general election process to provide proper representation of the constituency? Jason, please.
Yeah, they should. My friend Josh McCoon's actually introducing a bill to try to make it so that we don't have what we just had in Cobb County, where Republicans actually got the majority of the vote, we just had way too many Republicans. So, yeah, we really need to take a look at this and change the law.
Chris?
Yeah, I haven't actually read Josh's proposed bill, but I'm about 99.9% sure I'm going to be strongly in favor of it. Probably something we need to make relevant in the governor's race, because if you think about it, if you got a special election and you get 3 or 4 very qualified Republicans come out to it, and you get 1 Democrat come out to it, and they consolidate to if the Democrats able to consolidate, then you've essentially given them a real potential to be able to pick up a Republican seat. So that's my feelings on it.
All right, thank you. And this is the second part of this question. Jason, you kind of already answered it. Under this process, should the party trim the number of candidates to ensure Democrats do not win Republican seats? Jason?
Right. So this microphone's going off and on. It's frustrating, but there are different ways to deal with this, and one of them is actually changing the law. Another way is to actually have, a nominating convention within our own party. But there are different ways to do this where we can actually all coalesce around one candidate so we can defeat the Democrats so this doesn't happen again.
Chris, should we limit the number of Republicans running?
That sounds like a real sort of establishment idea to me. You know, let's get together in the room here and figure out who our guy's going to be, and let's you know, this guy over here, maybe his ideas are maybe they're just a little too strong conservative. You know, he's not gonna be well received by everybody. So no, I'm not real comfortable with that one.
Okay, thank you. All right, how often will we see and hear from you, Chris?
So one of the things that I hope to do is to be able to form an advisory council that it actually takes the role of RNC man and pairs it with the grassroots. I talked about earlier about how this position represents all of us. Well, the next step, the next practical step is getting us involved together. And I've got some more ideas on how to do that. But we're going to be, this is going to be something that we do together as issues come up, and we'll talk about it together, and we'll go up and I'll be the one presenting the message, but that's part of how you'll see me a lot.
All right, thank you. Jason?
I give my cell phone to everybody I know. I give it to my clients. Now, some people abuse that and call me really late at night, but the fact of the matter is I give my cell phone out, and I'll do it to you. It's 404-664-4626. I'll be the most accessible National Committee man you've ever had. That's not saying that Randy isn't. He's a very busy man, however, and he does get back to people, but I'm trying to raise that level, and I don't need to make an advisory board. I'm just going to give you my cell number. If you want to call me, you can.
And I appreciate that, and thank you, Jason. I'll absolutely do the same thing. I've had the same cell number for about 16 years, and I'm not changing it anytime soon. It's 229-873-0687.
Thank you. All right. How can we trust that you will be truthful, ethical, and transparent on any funding, benefits, or trips you or your family receive due to your position at the RNC? Chris, I think you're next.
I appreciate that. Ethics is a very big issue for me. I'm proud to serve on the Board of Governors for the State Bar of Georgia, which maintains the standards for ethical conduct in the state, and I will absolutely uphold the highest standards in that regard.
Thank you. Jason?
So my family and I were one of the biggest proponents of having ethics reform in Georgia. And I've always been ethical. I have a good reputation in the courts and with you all. And one of the reasons I have such widespread support is because even if we disagree, you all know that I've always been fair with everyone. And you know me as an ethical person. I won't change. I am who I am.
All right, thank you. Is our party doing enough to ensure we do not nominate a statewide or presidential candidate who may have potential ethical and corruption issues like the Democrats just had with Hillary Clinton? Oh, I'm sorry, Jason.
Say that again.
All right. Is our party doing enough to ensure we do not nominate a statewide or presidential candidate who may have potential ethical and corruption issues like the Democrats and Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, geez, you can really. I mean, there's a long process for a nomination, for a preference, whether it's whatever primary it is. We have a long time to go through that and check into people. So I think so.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Well, you know, I think about this in a couple of ways. There might be a document that we could have folks sign to represent, that they would, you know, legally represent under penalty of perjury, that certain standards. I would be cautious though, because I mean, if we see what's happened with Judge Roy Moore, right, where just anybody comes out of the woodwork with allegations that are 40 years old, and you know, we have no basis as to whether they're true or not. So I'd be real cautious with that one.
All right. So what should be done to our elected officials who do not abide by our platform? Are our elected officials to be held accountable by the Republican Party? Chris?
Could you repeat the question?
What should be done to our elected officials who do not abide by our platform? Are our elected officials to be held accountable by the Republican Party?
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably on all of us, that we get out there and make sure that we get the most ethical, conservative candidate elected. So that's why we need to be able to support, have good primary candidates and get them out of the office the next time.
Thank you. Jason?
Well, this is an issue that's come up over and over again for a long time. So, one of the things I do is if I have a problem with an elected official, I will call them directly. As a party, we're supposed to support our candidates. Okay, that's part of the rules. But at the same time, we have this issue of what happens when a candidate's not acting like, or an elected official isn't acting like, a Republican. Then what do? I think that's really more of the question. So for me, what I do is I contact them directly, or have friends of mine contact them directly, instead of going into the public and causing dissension in the party.
Thank you. All right, lastly, how should we be educating the masses on the dangers of liberalism and socialism? Jason?
One of the things I've done over the years as district chairman is I've had conferences and bring in as many people as possible to conferences. The last one I had was called Conservatism Outside the Box. And in that conference was basically a broad range of conservative thought. I didn't agree with all of it. I'll give you an example. I had my nephew come. He's out of Cobb County, but he goes nationwide with conservatives against the death penalty. Now, I don't know about you all, but I'm for electric bleachers. But he's against against the death penalty, and geez, that's the time.
You have 30 seconds.
Oh my God! So what I've done is brought in a whole bunch of people over the years to do these conferences to try to educate them. And I think the state party can do that. Different district parties can do that, and county parties as well.
Thank you.
Do I get a shot at that one? Yeah.
Yes.
We need to just use the platform of the internet and have the party make some, it doesn't cost any money, very minimal fees, and educate the folks on the dangers of liberalism and socialism by doing just some of these new nice videos you see that the campaigns do. Put it on get it out over Facebook and the internet, and that's the best way to be able to educate. Not everybody can get to a conference or a convention. Let's put it on the internet and get it around cheap and get it in front of these young people and change their minds.
Thank you. All right, we're ready for some Q&A, and Debbie has a little announcement.
I just want to let you know that with the questions that came in, I only pulled 2 questions out because they were repeats from the other ones here. So, and we have some questions coming in from Facebook. So.
Thank you. All right, the first question. At the last GOP presidential debate, all candidates except President Trump at that time pledged to support the party's nominee. Jeb Bush and John Kasich broke that pledge. If elected, what will you do about their breach of loyalty?
Wait, that question went a different way than I thought it was going to go.
Okay. Would you like me to read it
I
again?
thought it was going to be, will you support the,
Yeah. You want me to read it again?
Yeah, I guess. Did you get it?
Yeah, maybe read that one more time.
All right.
I don't know that I followed that either.
At the-
It's the first, not the last.
Oh.
First debate.
Oh, sorry. Okay. At the first GOP presidential debate, all candidates except President Trump at that time pledged to support the party's nominee. Jeb Bush and John Kasich broke that pledge. If elected, what will you do about their breach of loyalty?
I think I understand the question now. Right. So how can we be proactive at the RNC to keep that from happening again? Look, John Kasich and I probably don't agree on much of anything. I recognize that we're going to have to, need to have a broad tent to hear people's ideas. I don't know what the RNC can do to, when you break your pledge, they broke their word. I don't know what else you can do when somebody broke their word other than not having part of our party. And he's being talked about as a serious candidate. So I'm certainly not going to support him.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, we just, basically, just like Chris said, we need to remember that the next time they want to run for office again. and hold them to it.
Thank you. All right, next question. On August 5th, 2017, the GOP state parliamentarian clearly deceived the state committee by fabricating Rule 4.1C. Jack Staver sent a letter and video to all state committee members regarding this deception. Will you support the removal of John White as parliamentarian?
We'll take this one first. I'll be happy to.
Okay, Chris.
All right, so I've watched the video. I've read the rule. The rule was not correctly stated. I think that Mr. White needs an opportunity to be able to explain. Perhaps he was looking at a set of rules that maybe have been amended, but the rule as currently stated, as it currently exists, was not properly stated. And we need to give, I think it needs to be discussed at the next committee meeting.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, so the question actually was, which you didn't answer, was do you support the removal of the parliamentarian for violation of this? Our rules don't actually allow for the removal of someone who's been appointed. Okay, but the real question, or the real problem I see it is this. This has been going on for a while. In the past, we've had heavy-handed actions, maybe through the chairman, by the chairman, through the parliamentarian, that I've stood up for. I've always been a rules guy. I always will be. Sometimes I'm alone, but I do it. Another problem that we have, though, is the apathy of the people on the state committee. The state committee is the governing body of the Georgia Republican Party, but it has never been used that way. And until people on the state committee start waking up and care about their position on the state committee, it's not going to matter what the parliamentarian does.
Thank you. Next is a short question. Where do you stand on the Electoral College? Jason, you first.
It's part of our Constitution, and I support it.
Chris?
It's part of our Constitution, and I support it as well. If we didn't have it, we would have, let's see, Al Gore would have been president, probably Hillary, so yeah, we need it.
Thank you. All right. In my opinion, hold on, I can't read the handwriting on this. I'm going to go to the next question. What is your definition of a conservative, Chris?
Somebody who believes in our Constitution, somebody who's recognizes that that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and somebody who's not afraid to stand up and protect those rights and exercise those rights. That's what I think a conservative is.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
I think when you get right down to what is a true conservative believes that God is the foundation of law. And from that, we have our freedom documents, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. I think Chris and I would probably agree on most of this stuff here, but that's with what maybe not, with what a conservative is. But I believe that conservative is someone who loves liberty, loves God, loves the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. All right, this one question is from Facebook. Can you offer some perspective on the House Republican tax reform and how you expect it to affect home ownership? And I think, Jason, you can go first this time.
All right, well, I haven't sifted through the bill totally, but so the question is, how is it going to affect home ownership? I honestly haven't read through the bill, so I don't know how it's going to affect home ownership, but I hope they do pass something. I hope the Senate can pass something because they promised they would. And that's going to have it's going to have an effect on Republicans across the nation if they don't.
Thank you. Chris?
I haven't read the bill yet either. I understand there are some concerns that perhaps it doesn't offer fair tax relief to the middle class. I certainly hope they get something done as closest as to the with the president's agenda is what it should be. Limited government, lower taxes, so no, I haven't read the bill yet either. Though.
All right, thank you. Describe what makes you who you are. What is your foundation, Chris?
Great question. So I was raised in South Georgia. My mom and dad are here, and one of my brothers, my granddad. Thank you for being here. I was brought up on Judeo-Christian values. I was raised as a homeschool student. I went to a private high school for a couple of years in high school and played football and did all the fun stuff. But the way we were raised up, we're raised up belief in the Bible, believe in our Constitution, exercising our rights. That's made me who I am today, and I try to be a man of my word. I try to be a good husband to Jenny and a good dad to Preston. So, and ultimately a son and follower of Jesus Christ. So that's what makes me who I am.
Thank you, Jason.
It's very similar. First of all, I'm a Christian. My family is most important to me, more than anything. But I can tell you about my family. We're all involved in politics. Even my son, who's now 13. My daughter is president of the Kennesaw State College Republicans. At one time in her life, she says, "I hate this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to get involved in politics." And look at her now, right? Bring up a child the way they should go, as the Bible says. My son was the only one in the family that was a Ben Carson supporter out of the gate. So we all, we encourage and foster our kids to make up their own minds and do research. But what makes me who I am is my fundamental belief in God and in my family.
All right, thank you. As National Committeeman, what efforts will you take to involve young conservatives in decisions made at the national level? I think, Jason, you're first this time.
Say the question again?
As National Committeeman, what efforts would you take to involve young conservatives in decisions made at the national level?
Okay. Well, on the RNC or anywhere?
How about, I'm sure they just mean anywhere, like how would you get young conservatives involved?
Okay, well, one thing I do is actually, as many of you may not know this, but if you're National Committeeman, National Committeewoman, or the chairman of the party, and you go to the RNC, you can actually sponsor people. So you can sponsor people to actually go to RNC meetings. There's one idea you can do. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any others.
All right, thank you. Chris?
So I think I probably have maybe a little better perspective on this, because just to be involved with College Republicans coming up, I was a College Republican chairman. I was chairman of the Georgia Association of College Republicans. Now that's been, almost, I guess, 12, 14 years ago. But working with college Republicans and young Republicans groups to keep them fully apprised of what's going on, to hear their opinions with what's going on. Part of that critical function of what I talked about earlier about the advisory commission, I'm going to have someone from the College Republicans on there, someone from the YRs on there, if they'd be willing to do it, which I've already spoken with a couple of them, and they are. So they'll be abreast of what's going on, and I'll be able to hear from them as to their take, both what's important from the grassroots and on their level, what they're seeing. So it'll be a two-way street and exchange of information as to what's going on, to be able to make the position of RNC National Committeeman more effective.
Thank you. Are you guys willing to stand up to the National Committee over a matter of principle? Chris?
100% every time.
I already have. Back in 2012, when I was a delegate to the 2012 National Convention, they tried to pass Rule 16. We came out against it. I wasn't even on the RNC, and we came out against it, and we stopped what they were going to do. They basically wanted to disavow and replace, many of you might know this, some of you don't, replace delegates. All right, the duly elected delegates, give the nominee of the Republican Party the ability to replace delegates. My wife and I went to our hotel room, drafted a letter, it went viral. Mark Levin picked it up, and guess what? They changed their minds the next day.
Thank you. What do you see as the most significant issues that need to be addressed in the RNC rules? Sounds like, let's see, Jason's next, I think.
All right. Well, there's about 4 ones that are interesting. Rule 12 is an interesting one, because Rule 12, which wasn't there before, says that we can change the rules and amend the rules between conventions. We never had that before. That's kind of scary. It has an expiry date of September 30th of 2018, but potentially it's a problem, right? So usually it's quadrennially when the Rules Committee goes to the convention and changes it. So that's one of them. Rule 40 has been changed now for a plurality of states, of 5 states, to get your name in a nomination. That's another one. I hope they don't really dicker with. But But Rule 16 is an interesting one, and it's been in litigation, and it's going to come up again over and over because we have conflicting things. We've got the freedom of association, a First Amendment right of our party itself to make rules, and then we also have this First Amendment right where people are bringing litigation saying they have a freedom of conscience to vote how they will. And as you all know, that's where the binding of delegates and it comes in is under Rule 16. And there'll be more litigation on that in the future, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
So, okay, Rule 40, obviously that's with the presidential nominations process. That's been an important one. I wouldn't want to do anything with, there's a lot of complexities to that probably we wouldn't have time to get into today. But my general sense is what we don't want to do is usurp the will of the people in terms of who they have chosen to be their president. We don't want to get it into an RNC backroom deal, and that's really what some of the rule changes in each of the rules, 12, 16, any others that Jason mentioned. That's really what is getting at the heart of that is to additionally, there's a study committee right now that will have a report out in May of next year regarding closed primaries. The only thing, you know, I've got to, you know, I want to reserve judgment on that until we hear the report of the committee.
All right, thank you. Should we use winner take all or proportional for our presidential primaries, Chris?
Okay, so you know, again, we could get into the complexities of it, but what I don't want to do is usurp the will of the overall electorate. What the everyday voter goes in there to do. You know, I don't want to get into a backroom deal. And there's hyper technical you can get through the rule, but that's my take on it.
Thank you, Jason.
I actually like proportional better because it actually gives people a better choice in our delegation of who they want to be a delegate for. So I like proportional better. And there's some, you know, the rules of the RNC have clauses in them that when you can be proportional and the dates and when you cannot be. But personally, I like proportional better.
All right, thank you. All right, which, if any, presidential campaigns did you work on during the last election cycle and in what capacity, Jason?
Okay. I was coalition's chairman for Ted Cruz for president. My wife was a national co-chair. But I'm happy to say that immediately after he lost, we were both at the event at the Fox Theater, and my wife spoke. We were some of the first people to come out for President Trump. But that's the campaign I worked on before that, and Trump, then afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you also support Governor Scott Walker initially?
Yes,
Okay.
yes I did. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I'm proud to. He was great.
Well, backed by the Ricketts family, very establishment, but
No, it wasn't.
did a good job as governor. But well, I think
still
the
is.
Ricketts family was writing some big checks. But I supported Ted
weird.
Cruz. I was on his Georgia Finance Committee. I supported Ted Cruz until the next day of the Georgia primary. The day after the Georgia primary, I came out and supported President Trump, and got involved a little bit with lawyers for Trump. Didn't do much practically, but I supported President Trump.
Well, you didn't when you put on Facebook that the choice between voting for President Trump and Hillary Clinton was like being on life support. And choosing the method, the method of your suicide.
That doesn't sound like me.
Yeah, well, I'll show it to you.
All right, let's move on. All right, where do you stand on the fair tax and abolishing the 16th Amendment and giving us back the 4th Amendment? I guess there's 3 questions there. So let's start with the first one here. Where do you stand on the fair tax, Chris?
Well, hold on. Let's look at that. Was this after the primary?
Oh, so now you remember it.
No, I don't remember. I'm just asking.
I'll send it to you if you want.
I don't think it was after the primary.
Okay,
well,
I'll
it's
send it to
important.
you.
It's important because
It is important. You didn't support the president. You're right.
No, it's important that we support whoever our nominee is.
Yeah,
And
I
even
agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, what was the next question?
All right, I'm sorry. All right, the next question is on the fair tax. Where do you stand on the fair tax, Chris?
I think it's probably a good thing. I'd like to see more of it instituted. It gets away from some of the carve-outs, the loopholes that exist, that some of the very, very wealthy get to take advantage of, and it provides a boon for our economy, where goods are taxed in a more fair manner. So I support it.
Thank you. Jason, do you support the fair tax?
Yeah, Rob Woodall, my congressman in the 7th District, is a friend of mine. And he wrote the book on the fair tax, and the fair tax is great. I'll support it. I also support a flat tax. Either one would be better than what we have now.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go on to, I'll put the 16th Amendment and the 4th Amendment together here. Where do you stand on abolishing the 16th Amendment and giving us back the 4th? Jason?
Giving us back the 4th. Well, we already have our,
To the
we already have the
Constitution?
4th.
Yeah.
Well, there's been, some issues and stuff about, I don't know. All right,
Maybe we should move on.
all right, let's move on.
Makes sense. We
Yeah.
already have the 4th.
All right. Do Georgia voting machines need to be replaced to provide verifiable voting? Jason?
Yes. Yeah, they are, actually. They're being, in some counties, my understanding, I think in Cobb County, they're being replaced with printable ballots. I think we need to get away from the Diebold machines. I'd like to see where we actually can have a printout of what happened. There's been cases in some counties where there's been some shenanigans where somehow there's a whole bunch of votes that are plugged into the machine. Anytime we have just electronics, I think it's a problem. It's always good to have a paper record.
All right, Chris?
Yeah, I think that would be worth doing. I've been actually educated a little bit on the Diebold voting machines, and it sounds like there are some security risk with those, and that we need a paper ballot, so that makes sense.
Thank you. Do you think the Republicans in Washington are doing a good job or a bad job, and why do you feel that way, Chris?
Yeah, I think they're doing a terrible job. Their approval rating swings between 12 and 14%. I think if you it's on the most national polls, the president has laid out an agenda that most conservatives agree with, and his agenda is what is the heart and soul of what we as conservatives believe. Congress needs to get behind the president, and they need to get something done.
Thank you.
Are they doing a good job? No. No, they're not. They're not doing a good job. They ran on a lot of different promises. Obviously, one's tax reform. Hopefully, we can see that happen. But what was the main one, everybody?
Repeal and replace.
Yes. Where's that? Come on. I mean, this is ridiculous, isn't it? They've got to repeal it at the very least. I don't care if they replace this. I'd rather just at least repeal it. This isn't rocket science. They said they were going to do it. They need to do it. They need to do it. It's disappointing, isn't it?
Thank you. Should candidates get money from outside their voting borders, Jason?
Yeah, they should. It's a freedom of speech issue. All right, except not outside of the country, though. That's illegal.
All right.
Although it's being done. Yeah, look at the Clintons.
Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. The Supreme Court's ruled on it. People have a right to be able to have their First Amendment protected, and that's the right of free speech, and the giving of contributions is your right. That's a guaranteed constitutional right. The problem is if we start taking away the rights under the Constitution, where does it stop? So we need to defend those rights. And yeah, I'm certainly not in favor of it coming from other countries. Like Jason said, that's illegal.
How do you recommend the GOP promote fairness from the media, Chris?
Oh, God, what a terrible, just the institutions of the media, of journalism. It's a far cry from what used to be an honorable profession. I think we need to promote sort of third-party avenues of the media to be able to get our message out there.
Thank you, Jason.
It's So was the question, what do we need to do to help?
How would you recommend the GOP promote fairness from the media?
Well, one of the committees, this is going to be interesting considering what's happened through the years with CNN and others. So one of the main committees an important committee is the Committee on Presidential Debates. And it'll be interesting to see, at the RNC that is, so it'll be interesting to see if we decide to go with the CNN debate. Now, do I think we should have a debate here in Georgia? Heck yeah, I do. And guess who's here? CNN, unfortunately. But, and we were going to have a debate here at one time, if you remember. Sue Everhart was really trying hard to get a debate here. But it's going to be interesting considering what happened last time with Donna Brazile and the moderator feeding the questions to Hillary Clinton, to see if we stick with these main media networks again, the liberal media, or if we're going to do something different. Obviously, we want to appeal to the most people, don't we? But at the same time, there's a trust issue there.
All right, I've got a couple cards here that basically have the same question. I got one here from Facebook, so I'm going to kind of combine these from a couple different people. How will you continue to grow the party in rural Georgia? We also have a question of what will you do to reach out to minorities? I think, Jason, you're first this time.
Okay. I'm going to travel all over the state. As far as rural Georgia is concerned, the 7th district, which I'm in now, is mostly, metropolitan type, but it used to be Barrow and Walton counties, and I was at their meetings all the time. Of course, I grew up in the country, so I'm used to it. I feel more comfortable, to be honest with you, outside of the city. Just because I grew up in South Dakota, if you didn't know that. There's more people in my county than there are in South Dakota. However, the South Dakota National Committeeman was a year ahead of me in high school. He's a friend of mine, and he's endorsing my campaign. But I'll travel all over the state. I think we need to do a better job with showing chairmen how to actually be a chairman and have programs and training. We're not doing that anymore, and I'm seeing some real problems across the state.
Thank you. Okay, and here's the next question. Name a time that you stood up to the unethical or illegal I don't know, that wasn't written out that well. All right. Sorry.
I'd like to take the last question if I
It's
could.
just basically name a time that you stood up to unethical or illegal, I guess, actions in
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
GOP.
Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot. Chris didn't get to respond to the other question.
Well, thank you. I'm from a rural county, Thomas County. We're in the very bottom part of the state. I've been a chairman of a rural county in Berrien County, which is a neighboring county in South Georgia. I've earned the support of over 50 county chairmen, current county Republican Party chairmen, each of those from rural counties, that are from rural counties. And the rural counties, and I know it's maybe a lot of us here in the room are from metro, but the rural counties a lot of times feel left out in terms of having representation in leadership. And I know that those folks would appreciate the state committee members, and they've said as much, in helping choose a leader that understands what it means to be a leader in rural county, in a rural GOP. And they need a voice too. And I look forward to being that voice for them, as well as all Georgia Republicans, as I've stated. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question. Do you support the Good Government Accountability Act, otherwise known as Sunset, in Georgia? Jason? Oh, Chris?
I'm not familiar with that legislation. If it's current law, I would support it unless it's unconstitutional, probably, or against the Constitution of the state of Georgia. But I'm not very familiar with that particular law.
Thank you.
I'm really not familiar with it either. I mean, just by its title, it sounds great. But if it's ethics, if it has anything to do with reforming ethics, of course, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Do you support making education local?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, of course. I think, back in '95, I worked for Pat Buchanan's presidential campaign in McLean. And one of the things that Pat used to do is say that he wanted to get rid of the NEA and go in and throw the people out with the beads and sandals and fumigate the place. And I always liked that. But I think that these bureaucrats have absolutely ruined education. They've shoved this socialism, progressivism, and atheism down the throats of kids. College coming out to, now it's all the way down into elementary school for the most part. I believe in school choice, school vouchers. I think one of the biggest racial problems we have today is that we don't have school choice. When you saw, it's an issue that Republicans can run on. Look, did you see with the charter schools, the Democrats, the white Democrats came out against it. Why? Because a lot of them were racist. But they came out against charter schools. But black Democrats came out for charter schools. Do you know why? Because they don't want their kids in bad schools, right? So this is like the biggest civil rights issue of our time, that we should have freedom of choice and education. I'm all for vouchers. I'm all for school choice.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. Yes, 100% support it. My first probably large interaction with something political was when I was young. And I remember Bill Clinton had just gotten elected, and they were trying to pass, we knew it as H.R. 6, House Resolution 6. What it essentially did was outlawed homeschooling, which was our way of life. The way that what that bill did was it required, as I recall, it required teachers to become certified, and that all teachers. So it was essentially outlaw. It was a way that liberals were going to outlaw homeschooling and severely restrict the rights of private schools. So we need to make education more local. We need to provide choices for the parents, and I mean it goes to the constitutional rights of people to be able to raise their own children and educate them in the manner that they feel is best. So yeah, let's get out of the NEA top level. Washington knows best, and let's let local decide.
Thank you. All right, we're going to try this question one more time. Name a time that you stood up to the unethical or illegal actions in the GOP. Chris is first.
I'm sure I have. I would hope if something illegal was done, we would have seen that the individual was prosecuted. I can't think of one where anybody necessarily went to jail that was in a trial that was involved in the party. Something may come to me, but I can't think of one right now.
Okay, Jason?
Okay. Well, if you all know me, you know that I'm a stickler for rules. I'm a rules guy. And there's been many times that I've stood up, whether it's an executive committee, whether it's a state committee, in my own board, regarding the rules. And if I think something's wrong, I will stand up against it. This thing that happened with last state committee meeting, I was a little oblivious because I got asked to be a sergeant in arms. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. But any of you that have been on the state committee for any period of time know that sometimes I'm one of the few people that will stand up and point out when a rule is not being followed, or if I think something is unethical, and I'm not going to change from that. I always will do it. And I try to do it in a spirit of love and kindness, but sometimes I get angry too.
Thank you. Got a couple questions here about veterans. What are you going to do for our veterans, the disabled and homeless? Do you support our veterans should get benefits for life? Jason's first.
Okay. I'm not a veteran myself, but I think veterans are basically the salt of the earth. I mean, if it wasn't for veterans, we wouldn't have a country. If it wasn't for veterans, we wouldn't have the freedoms we have. So we basically owe everything for veterans. One of the biggest regrets I have in my life is that I never joined the service. And You know, when I think about that, it eats at me because it's something I wish I would have done. You know, my dad was a Marine. I've got a lot of good friends that are Marines, and a good friend right there is in the Army. But we need to pay close attention to veterans and what's going on. I see in my own practice, veterans come in that've got some real problems that need to be addressed with PTSD issues. And if possible, I'd like to be a voice to talk about this with people, because these guys are coming back and they're not getting the help they need. And the Veterans Administration and the VA hospitals aren't doing a very good job.
Thank you, Chris.
Veterans are the very best of our country, the very best of what we have. We need to do everything that we can to ensure that that they have all the benefits that they need for life. Was not a veteran, was not in the military either. Obviously respected tremendously. You know, I almost hesitate to say it because compared to what they do for us, it's not much. But what little bit I have done is when I was in general law practice and had the ability, I was a VA claims lawyer, and I represented some clients who had their benefits turned down and didn't charge them anything, and helped to be able to get their benefits when the VA turned them down. But again, that's very small, and I almost wouldn't even mention it except to say that they are very near and dear to my heart. And so you guys that are here today, thank you very much, and we're going to do everything we can do to do as the President said, and get the VA to get it cleaned up and get it working properly.
Thank you. And we'll on to our last couple questions here. In my opinion, whomever wrote this is sustained by many. The party up and down is fragmented. Do you agree? Do you have a plan now, or for Georgia to correct this to move forward? Chris, you're first.
Well, we're fragmented. We have different folks with different ideas. We're a broad party. I think there's a strength to that. I mean, look at the coalition that has endorsed me. I think we're stronger for having one. Now, we need to be of like mind and of the same mission whenever we, when we gear up and we go out to engage with the Democrats in terms of we need to all be on the same team. We're all supporting the Republican candidate in the race. But I think actually, the different ideas are the strength of our party.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I know what they're talking about, whoever it was with the question. I mean, I think we do suffer from a factionalism in our party. And it's not just through ideas, it's through candidates. Sometimes people kind of just get in a candidate's corner and that's their identity as one candidate, and they follow them, and that's their group, that's their faction. But if you've ever looked at any of my endorsements that I've sent out, I've got a broad range of people, from probably the most conservative to the most establishment, and I have a good track record of bringing people together. If you can talk to people in truth and peace and love, you can still disagree with them. You don't have to be a bomb thrower and call them a name. I think we can work through our differences and come together as Republicans.
Thank you. The next question that I have here is, how do you feel about the GRA, or the Georgia Republican Assembly? Jason first.
Okay. So I think there's a lot of misinformation about Republican assemblies. Some people might not like folks that are in it, but the fact of the matter, in Georgia, but individual, grievances or something like that. But the GRA actually, or the Republican assemblies in California, was started by who? Anybody know? Ronald Reagan. So the organization itself it was meant to gather together and promote a conservative candidate at nominating conventions and things like that, and that was the gist behind it originally. From its inception. So So it's a big thing out in California and some other states. I think it's kind of lagged and, or non-existent in some states, but I think I answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
I didn't know the history on the GRA, but I know a lot of the folks that are in the organization, and they're friends of mine, and they're strong conservatives, and they've been fighting hard for the Republican Party for a long time. So I think they're a great organization based on my knowledge of those folks, and I see it as an augmenting partner in electing Republicans.
All right, thank you. And one of the last questions is, did it bother you that the 6th district was basically for sale by California money? Chris?
In terms of they're giving money to Ossoff, who didn't even live in the district, I think that's probably just how the Democrats work. So.
All right, Jason?
Did it bother me? Yeah, but this goes back to the earlier question about should people be able to give money across state lines? And they should. So that was the Democrats' big chance. They wanted to pour all this money into this nerdy guy Ossoff, and he still didn't win, and that was great. Man, did they spend a lot of money. And Karen still kicked his butt. I'm so proud of her.
All right, thank you. And the last question is, do you have to be a Christian to be a Republican, Jason?
I guess not. I mean, anybody could say they're Republican. To be a true conservative, I think you probably have to be. I mean, although personally, I think I have some libertarian type ideas sometimes, but I'm certainly not an irreligious libertine, okay? And I think there's a difference. But do you have to be a Christian? No. Obviously, we have Jews in our Republican Party and Muslims and Hindus and everything else. Is that what the question is? Do you have to be a Christian to be a Republican?
Yeah, that's what they wrote.
Yeah, okay.
Chris?
Yeah, no, we have strong members of Jewish faith that are part of our Republican Party. So, no.
All right, thank you. And unless Debbie has another question, I think we're to the end. So I thank you. Thank you so much for participating in this event with us. Thank you.
Thank you.